The story opens with a man overwhelmed by excruciating pain, sharp, relentless, like an arrow piercing his skull. He screams, fearing a cerebral hemorrhage, desperate not to die so young. He struggles to rise, caught between panic and confusion. Then, something shifts. He wakes, or perhaps begins to understand. But is this truly consciousness, or just another layer of the dream? His gaze lands on an open book resting on a desk, filled with strange, cryptic questions. A strange clarity returns. Yet, even in this awakened state, a searing pain remains, like a knife slowly carving through his head. Rubbing his eyes, he tries to shake off the lingering impact of what just happened. The pain is unbearable. He thinks he might need to take the day off just to recover. Then, realization hits him like a wave. His eyes snap open again. Something feels wrong. He surveys the room around him. It's unfamiliar. Alien. The sharp pain still lingers, making him question everything, his surroundings, his identity, even his own existence. The room spins. His vision blurs. Nothing here makes sense. His eyes are drawn to a desk cluttered with books, and a revolver. The setup is foreign to him. Nothing here sparks recognition. He pauses to assess his condition. The silence in the room is unnerving, broken only by the sound of his racing heartbeat. Then, he looks toward the window. Outside, a blood-red moon hangs in the night sky, casting an eerie glow over an unknown city. His heart pounds. This isn't just strange, it's wrong. Deeply, unmistakably wrong. Still trying to understand what's happening, he turns to the mirror. What he sees sends a chill down his spine. A face stares back at him, familiar yet foreign. Confused and shaken, he mutters, "I cried." Could it be? Has he transmigrated, reincarnated into another body, another life? The idea seems absurd. He's read about such things in web novels, fantasy stories he never took seriously. Yet now, faced with this surreal experience, he can no longer deny the possibility. He forces himself to breathe. To calm down. To focus. He begins to meditate, sifting through the chaotic memory swirling within him. Gradually, fragments come back. Lately, he'd been feeling terribly unlucky. He remembers stopping by a roadside vendor after work, someone selling old books. Frustrated with life, he bought one on a whim. A strange thought surfaces, could it be because of that luck enhancement ritual? He remembers following bizarre instructions from the book, placing staple foods in all four corners of his room and performing the ritual. He thought it was nonsense. But then, the memories come crashing in. Memories that don't belong to him. He sees a young boy sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by books. A name echoes in his mind, Klein Moretti. And then, the pain returns. He clutched his head in pain as memories surged violently before his eyes. First, he saw a young boy from the Luan Kingdom of the Northern Continental Congress, hailing from the city of Tugjin in the county of Ava. Then came the image of a young boy and girl in formal attire, both smiling with quiet serenity. The flood of memories confused and pained Zoe Maigri, yet they slowly wove together into a clear picture of Klein Morty's life. Klein's father had been a sergeant in the Imperial Army, a soldier who laid down his life in a colonial war against the Southern Continental Congress. His sacrifice ensured the family received a pension, which allowed Klein to attend a private grammar school. His mother, a devout follower of the Evernite goddess, gave him constant support and guidance, until tragedy struck again. The very year Klein passed his university entrance exams, his mother passed away. After that, Klein lived with his elder brother and younger sister in a small two-bedroom apartment. His brother, working as a clerk in an import-export company, shouldered the burden of supporting the family. Despite the hardships, Klein had graduated with a degree in history. He was fluent in the ancient Ansiefi language, considered the root of all northern continent dialects, and also knew Hermes, the sacred language of rituals and ancient legends. Suddenly, a chilling realization struck John, Hermes. That name echoed through his mind as he stood silently in the room. A notebook lay open on the desk before him, covered in eerie, oversized writing. The words were written in what looked like blood. A horrifying message stood out. Everyone will die. Shock washed over him. His hands were stained, dirty. No, bloody. He stared at them in horror, realizing it was fresh. Pain surged from his temple, sharp and sudden, radiating through his ear. He touched the spot instinctively, then looked at his fingers, slick with red. He turned to the mirror, his reflection staring back at him with wide eyes. As his fingers traced the source of the pain on his forehead, his fear escalated. There was a wound, a gunshot wound. Outside, the blood-red moon loomed over the city, casting an eerie light into the room. Inside, Klein stood in stunned silence. No one survives a wound like this, he whispered. Yet, here he was, alive. Or something like it. He touched the half-healed wound again. How was this possible? Questions spiraled in his mind. Was this some side effect of transmigration? The so-called Hagi effect? But then, how exactly did he die? His eyes drifted back to the desk. There was a revolver resting beside the notebook. He picked it up. One bullet remained in the chamber. Bloodstains surrounded the area, and a single bullet lay on the floor. His breath caught. This was how he died. Klein's eyes narrowed. Was it suicide, or murder? If it had been suicide, how desperate must the original Klein have been? His brother couldn't even afford a gas lamp for studying. Where would he have gotten a revolver? But if this was murder, who would target a poor, lower-class history graduate? What reason would anyone have? Frustrated, Klein washed his face with soap, desperate to clear his head. The memories, fragmented and incomplete, offered no solid clues. But at least he could clean himself up. The blood on the floor could wait. Inside the dim apartment, Klein stood deep in thought, staring at the revolver. His mind was still racing with everything he had just uncovered: blood, memories, death. But before he could get any deeper, a soft creak echoed from the door. His younger sister, Melissa, stepped in. "What are you doing, Klein?" she asked, her tone casual yet curious. Startled, Klein quickly hid the revolver out of sight. He turned to her with a cheerful smile, trying to mask his unease. "You're early, as usual," he said, picking up a small pocket watch from the desk. "I was just trying to fix this, but my hands gave up on me." Melissa noticed the watch in his hand. She tilted her head and extended her palm, her eyes expectant. "Give it to me," she said simply. Standing at the doorway, she waited, persistent but composed. Klein was caught off guard by her straightforwardness but handed the watch over. Melissa examined it with a critical eye and, after a few moments, set to work. In no time, she handed it back, fixed. Klein blinked in surprise. She had done it with such ease. This was Melissa Moretti, just 16, the youngest in the family, and a promising student in the steam and machinery department at Tingen Technical School. Her dream? To become a steam engineer. And she was clearly on the right path. Mechanical aptitude ran through her fingers. Klein smiled as he looked at her. She was exactly as he remembered her, focused, determined, and undeniably talented. But then Melissa gave him a sharp look. Klein froze. Did she think he was acting strange? Worse, did she think he was mentally impaired? He turned away, a little embarrassed. Later that morning, Klein placed 2 loaves of bread on a plate. Melissa, ever the responsible one, reminded him to pick up fresh bread from the market, but not more than 8 pounds. It was hot outside. Any more would spoil. And don't forget the loaf and the pieces, she added firmly. Klein nodded, appreciating her concern. But in the back of his mind, he was already thinking about the luck enhancement ritual. If he could just get the right materials, he might be able to try again. Maybe even find a way back home. The scene shifts. Klein rummages through a desk drawer, then checks under the bunk bed. He's searching for something important. Finally, he finds it and exhales in relief. Cut to the bustling streets of Tianjin. The market is alive with color and sound, vendors shouting, customers haggling, the smells of roasted fish and oyster soup wafting through the air. Klein walks through it all, watching, absorbing. He passes by a vegetable seller with freshly picked greens. As he moves along, he thinks to himself how vibrant and chaotic the lower-class markets are. There's life here, real life. He glances at the coins in his hand. It isn't much. But he chuckles to himself. No matter where you are in the world, money always looks cute. Still, the lack of fun stings. Transmigration hadn't come with a wallet. He heads into Goshen's bakery, run by the kind and chatty Mrs. Smyrny. He asks for 8 pounds of dry bread. "Where's Benson?" she asks, glancing around. "That boy hasn't come by yet. Such a hard-working young man. I do hope he finds a good wife soon." Then her eyes shift back to Klein. "Congratulations on finishing school. A history degree from Koei University, right? You'll start earning soon. You really should move out of that cramped apartment. Maybe somewhere with a private bathroom." Klein smiled warmly. "You're looking lively today, Mrs. Smyrny," he replied with a small laugh. But beneath the surface, doubts lingered. How would he survive the job interview with memories that weren't fully his? Could he even stay in this world? His friends, his real life, were waiting for him back home. Mrs. Smyrny handed him the bread. "That'll be 9 pence, she said. Klein was surprised. Just days ago, the bread cost 11 pence. 2 months earlier, it was 15. Now, it was down to 9. Mrs. Smyrny chuckled and said they should thank the Grain Act. Klein nodded absently, remembering that Melissa had specifically asked for a loaf and some pieces. He silently thanked the protesters who had marched for food reform. Carrying the bread in a cloth bag, Klein continued through the bustling market. The sounds of daily life echoed around him, merchants calling out, carts creaking, laughter, chatter. He passed a colorful flyer pinned to a wooden post. It advertised a circus, a clown troupe set to perform the next night. "Come see the magic," the flyer read. Klein took it, thinking Melissa might enjoy something like that. He briefly wondered how much the tickets would cost. As he walked, a woman stepped in front of him, dressed like a witch, long dark robes, a pointed hat, and eyes that glinted with playful mystery. "Want your fortune told?" she asked. Klein hesitated, then shook his head. "No, thank you." But the woman persisted, her voice smooth and confident. "My tarot reading is very accurate." Klein stopped in his tracks. Tarot. She had pronounced it exactly like they did on Earth. Intrigued, he allowed his thoughts to wander. Tarot cards in this world, were they like the ones he knew? He recalled a memory from Klein's mind. Tarot wasn't some ancient or divine invention. In fact, it had only existed for 170 years, first created by none other than Roselle Gustave, a historical giant who had once served as the consul of the Intis Republic. Roselle had revolutionized technology, developing the steam engine and improving sailing ships. Eventually, he declared himself Emperor Caesar, transforming the Intis Republic into an empire. Nations like Lemberg and several others became protectorates under his rule. Even major powers like the Lun Kingdom, Faisak Empire, and other northern nations were forced to bend the knee. Under his reign, the Church of the God of Craftsmanship underwent a divine revolution, its deity rebranded as the God of Steam and Machinery. Roselle wasn't just a political figure or inventor. He had also created tarot divination, designing the card system, spreads, and reading styles. Many of the names were familiar: War, Texas Hold'em, even Guatemala. But Roselle's end was tragic. In the 189th year of the Fifth Epoch, he was assassinated, betrayed by the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun, the Sauron family, and remnants of old nobility. He died in the White Maple Palace. Klein narrowed his eyes. Could Roselle have been a transmigrator too, he wondered. My senior in this strange fate. He looked back at the witch. She smiled. "Since you're my first customer today," she said, "I'll do it for free." Curious and cautious, Klein followed her to a small table set up near the edge of the market. She sat across from him, pulling out her tarot deck with practiced ease. 3 cards fell on the table, face up. The Magician, the Slayer, the Hanged Man. Klein's heart skipped a beat. He recognized these names. These were real cards from Earth's tarot deck. And yet, they were here. His thoughts returned again to Roselle. Could it be that this man had brought knowledge from another world? Was this more proof? "Please shuffle the cards," the witch said, and cut the deck. "No tricks, no charges." Klein hesitated, eyeing her. "No hidden fees?" he asked suspiciously. "None," she smiled. "Completely free." He shuffled the cards and nodded. "Done." She leaned forward. "So, what would you like to know? The past, the present, or the future?" Klein sat silently for a moment, weighing the question. The woman's tone shifted, less playful now, more serious. "To get real answers," she said, "you must shuffle with clear intention." Klein frowned slightly. Was she stalling? Or was she trying to read him? Was this just a market trick? Or something more? Slightly irritated but still curious, he shuffled the cards again, this time focusing his thoughts. Who am I now? What lies ahead? Is there still a way back? Klein shuffles the cards and asks if there's a problem this time. With a cheerful smile, the woman replies that there isn't. She lays out 3 cards, past, present, and future, then offers her client a choice. Klein chooses to see the present. The card revealed is the Fool, tarot card number 4. Klein falls into deep thought, pondering its meaning, new beginnings, endless possibilities. But before he can reflect further, another woman suddenly bursts in, looking exactly like the tarot reader. She angrily accuses her of being an imposter. The original tarot reader is stunned, but quickly bares her teeth in frustration, reminding the intruder that her real profession is animal training, not fortune-telling. After a tense exchange, the fake leaves. Klein is left in confusion. The tarot reader, still stressed, apologizes and offers to interpret his cards properly, but only for a price. When Klein asks if it's free and she refuses, he decides to leave. Outside, with only bread in his hands, Klein grumbles over the bizarre encounter. He reflects that he was supposed to receive a reading, but instead, he had dealt with an animal trainer pretending to be a fortune teller. On top of that, money is tight, barely enough to buy the staples Melissa asked for. Later, at home, Klein sits at his desk translating the luck ritual incantation into ancient languages. He finds Hermes too complex but manages with ancient Fasik and Lun. Deciding to give it a try, he prepares for the ritual. He places a loaf of bread on the table and sets 4 loaves at the corners of the room, forming a ritual circle. Then he chants, "Blessings stem from the immortal Lord of heaven and earth." He repeats it 3 times. But suddenly, a deafening noise shakes the room. Klein panics as his vision blurs, voices echoing around him in a language he cannot understand. Agony pierces his head as though nails are driven into his skull. He collapses, regretting ever starting the ritual. His body faints, but instead of falling, he begins to float, suspended in the air. Confusion clouds his thoughts. Where is this place? Am I awake or dreaming? When he opens his eyes, Klein finds himself in a world of black-gray fog, with glowing red particles drifting endlessly. Nervously, he stretches out a hand to touch one. The moment he does, energy surges through him, and light bursts from his body. He realizes something is terribly wrong. Then, the scene shifts. A girl named Audrihol appears, calling for Arina to wake up. The room is quiet, lit by a chandelier, warmed by a fireplace, polished with veneer. Sitting before the mirror, Audrihol whispers to herself, "He always claimed that this mirror, this Arina, was never connected to the dark aperture, yet here it was." The Inshishti, a unique treasure of the Solomon Empire, appears. Suddenly, the mirror begins to glow with a dazzling light. The scene shifts to a ship sailing across the ocean. On board stands Alger Valsin, holding a crystalline object in his hand. He mutters that he still doesn't have enough ghost shark blood. As he studies the crystal again, it begins to shine brightly. In an instant, a loud explosion erupts, and streaks of light illuminate the entire ship. The perspective shifts once more. Klein finds himself standing among strangers, bewildered. Where is this place? He wonders, what is this place? Alger Valsin is there too, speaking in Lun with a blonde girl holding a fan. Klein observes silently. He doesn't know what's happening, or what this place even is. He begins to suspect that both Alger and Audrey might have been drawn here by his luck enhancement ritual. If that's true, it's better not to expose himself. Instead, he decides to test the waters, perhaps he can gather useful information first. Klein speaks vaguely, saying that it was all a ruse. The scene grows hazy. Audrey and Alger exchange shocked glances, their outlines barely visible in the thick fog. Audrey, unsettled, asks whether the attempt is over and if she can now go home. Both she and Alger remain hidden in the mist. Audrey's golden hair and Alger's blue hair are visible, but their faces cannot be seen clearly. Klein feels troubled. Is it because of my lack of strength? Or simply my lack of understanding of this mysterious world? Still, he reminds himself, I am the host, and they are the guests. If he wished, he could dismiss them at once. Audrey, sensing no ill intent, is instead fascinated. She marvels at the experience, admitting she has always been curious about mysteries and the supernatural. Boldly, she asks Klein what it takes to become a Beyonder. Klein finds the question both amusing and thought-provoking. Answering so casually doesn't feel right. If he truly is the host here, then this place should reflect it. There should be grandeur, a temple, and a long table where he sits at the head as his guests take their seats. And suddenly, it happens. A sound echoes, and the foggy world shifts completely. Before their eyes, a massive, majestic temple rises into view. Towering pillars stretch upward, every surface etched with intricate designs. Inside stands a grand table, long and solemn, with chairs neatly arranged. A powerful wind rushes through the hall as if welcoming their presence. Audrey is awestruck, whispering that this must be a miracle. Klein now sits calmly at the head of the table, finally appearing in the role of a true host. Alger breaks the silence, asking Audrey if she is from Lun. He explains that if she truly wishes to become a Beyonder, she must join one of the great churches, the Church of the Evernight Goddess, the Church of the Lord of Storms, or the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery. Alger adds that most ordinary people never even meet a Beyonder. Even within the churches, encounters are rare, and the higher-ranking clergy remain distant. He further reveals that Beyonders serve in courts, tribunals, and execution agencies, fighting the ever-growing threat of darkness. And disturbingly, their numbers have been increasing. Audrey Hall admits she already knows much of what Alger is saying, about the Night Watchers, the mandated punishers, and even the fact that machines can have minds. But she adds that what she values most is freedom, and she doesn't want to lose it. Alger Valsin replies bluntly, asking if she has ever heard of anyone becoming a Beyonder without paying a price. If she refuses to join a church and take their tests, her only choices would be to seek out noble families whose histories stretch back over 1,000 years, or to take the dangerous path of dealing with the evil organizations that hide in the shadows. Audrey hesitates, then asks if there truly is no other way. Hearing this, Alger's expression shifts. He admits that he does possess 2 potion recipes. Audrey, startled, presses him to reveal which ones. Alger explains that to become a true Beyonder, one must rely on potions, and these recipes were recorded on the blasphemy slate. Over time, their names have been translated and altered across many languages, yet each name still reflects the potion's essence. The first recipe, he reveals, is for the Sailor Potion. It grants the ability to move with perfect balance even on storm-tossed seas and allows one to swim and dive underwater for up to 10 minutes, like a sea creature. Audrey is surprised, remarking that it sounds just like the Keeper of the Sea from the Church of the Lord of Storms. Alger nods, confirming that indeed, that was its older name. The second recipe, he continues, is called spectator. Unlike the sailor, this one sharpens the mind. It heightens observation skills so keenly that by carefully watching someone's expressions, mannerisms, and words, the user can glimpse their true inner thoughts, as if watching a play unfold before their eyes. Alger warns, however, that no matter how powerful, a spectator can only ever remain just that, a watcher on the sidelines. Audrey admits she likes the sound of the spectator and eagerly asks how she might obtain the recipe, and what she would need to trade for it. Alger doesn't hesitate, his price is at least 800 milliliters of ghost shark blood. Skeptical, Audrey questions how she could trust him. How could she know that Alger would hand over the genuine formula once he received the blood? Alger calmly replies that he can provide her with an address. When he receives the blood, he will send the formula there, or even deliver it directly to prove its authenticity. At this point, Audrey makes a bold suggestion. If their transaction could be witnessed by the mysterious being before them, both she and Alger would feel reassured. She turns toward Klein, still hidden in the fog, and asks if he would act as their witness. Then, almost shyly, she asks him, "What should we call you?" Klein thinks for a moment, his fingers tapping lightly on the surface before him. Then, with deliberate calm, he answers, "You may call me the Fool." Both Alger and Audrey freeze in shock, staring at him in disbelief. Audrey finally speaks, addressing him with respect, "Honorable Mr. Fool, would you be willing to serve as a witness to our transaction?" Alger follows, bowing his head slightly, agreeing that such a witness would indeed be fitting. Both Audrey and Alger are honored, proud even, to have Mr. Fool act as their witness. Klein, however, reminds them that the way he is currently communicating is not ideal for his present condition. Alger responds with instructions: if they manage to obtain ghost shark blood, they should deliver it to Pritz Harbor and inform owner Williams that the captain wants it. Audrey then asks Mr. Fool if he has any objections to their transaction. Klein reflects for a moment. Since he has already agreed to be their witness, this gathering is no longer a one-time event, it has the potential to continue. Alger presses further, asking whether Mr. Fool doesn't find these gatherings interesting. He explains that while Mr. Fool is undeniably powerful, there are fields where he may not be an expert. Alger and the highborn young lady across the table could offer their own experiences, insights, and resources. Audrey is startled at first. Does her accent and bearing reveal her noble origins? But she quickly thinks ahead, perhaps in the future, Alger Valsin could help Mr. Fool with tasks that would be inconvenient for him to handle directly. Encouraged, Audrey adds that she finds Alger's suggestion excellent. If their gatherings became regular, Mr. Fool could assign tasks within their capabilities, and they would willingly assist. Klein considers this carefully. With more gatherings, he could gain knowledge about Beyond Us and the hidden mysteries of the world, perhaps even discover a way to return to his original world. He also decides that at the next meeting, he should learn the formula for the spectator potion. Still, he worries, the more they gather, the greater the risk of his true identity being exposed. At last, Klein speaks. He declares that he values fair and equal exchange. Any help they provide will be rewarded, and everything will be balanced. Their gatherings will continue, every Monday at 3 p.m. He also advises them to prepare in advance, so their participation will not interfere with daily life. Audrey, delighted, asks if this means Mr. Fool agrees. She then suggests that since their meetings will be regular, long-term, and secret, they should each adopt code names. Inspired by Mr. Fool's own title, she proposes they follow the system of the Major Arcana Tarot cards. She chooses Justice as her code name. Alger thinks for a moment, then settles on the Hanged Man. Audrey goes further: if all of them take names from the Major Arcana, then their gathering should be called the Tarot Club. She turns to Mr. Fool respectfully, asking if he approves. Klein responds calmly, saying that small matters such as naming can be decided by them. He also remarks that tarot cards were originally created by Emperor Rizel as nothing more than a game, and in themselves, they hold no divine power. He disagrees. Insists that divination comes from within. Every human carries their own connection to the supernatural, their own hidden ability to perceive higher truths. The common folk fail to understand it, dismissing it as superstition, but in reality, divination is a science, just one expressed through symbols and simplified tools. Dreams, he explains, are the simplest form of divination. Tarot cards, too, serve as such tools, helping to reveal knowledge hidden within the subconscious. And so, beneath the grey fog and in the presence of Mr. Fool, the Tarot Club is born. As the meeting continues, Klein suddenly feels a sharp headache pressing against his mind. The pain intensifies, and he realizes that if it grows any worse, he will no longer be able to maintain his connection with this mysterious grey fog world. He calmly declares, "Let's end today's meeting here." Audrey rises politely, while Alja simply nods and replies, "As you wish." Audrey then vanishes into the mist, leaving Alja and Klein behind. Alja soon departs as well, but Klein remains seated, whispering to himself that he will wait for the next gathering. The foggy world fades, and Klein awakens back in his room. For a moment, it feels unreal, like a dream. He wonders what that strange world of fog truly was, and what power could reshape it so drastically. On his desk lies his pocket watch. Klein picks it up, smiling faintly as he notes that time flows the same in both worlds. He marvels at the gathering they just created. Despite being scattered across the world, they were able to communicate as if distance meant nothing, like an otherworldly version of online chat rooms back on Earth. But the thought quickly sobers him. He accepts that there is no returning to Earth, at least not in the short term. From now on, there is no Ju Mingrue, only Klein Moretti. The scene shifts to the stormy seas. Thunder rumbles as lightning tears across the sky. A massive sailing ship struggles against the raging waves. On its deck stands Alja Valsin, clutching a crystalline pyramid in his hand, his eyes wide in disbelief. The pyramid shatters suddenly, fragments scattering into the storm. In its place, a glowing snowflake-shaped symbol forms in his palm. Alja stares at it, trying to comprehend its meaning, before stepping forward into a dimly lit corridor. He stops before a door marked Captain 1. Inside, a pirate captain sits at his desk. The captain glares defiantly and growls, "I will not lose." Alja meets his gaze and calmly replies, "I believe you can do it." But the tension snaps. Alja lunges, slamming the captain against the wall with brutal force. The wood cracks under the impact. He grips the man's throat tightly, blood dripping as the captain gasps for air. With a final, crushing blow, Alja hurls him out of the ship. Moments later, a crew member enters, startled. He asks what happened. Alja coolly replies that the captain ran away but still retained some beyond the powers. The partner dismisses it as unimportant. After all, they are about to claim a greater prize, a ghost ship from the Tudor era. He adds that if the storm continues, they will be sent straight to the city, and the captain will never survive. As he speaks, the cracks in the wall begin to seal themselves, as though nothing ever happened. Alja watches quietly and concludes with certainty, a new era has begun. The scene changes again. Audrey Hall sits deep in thought. On her hand, faint red particles swirl together, forming a mysterious sign. She realizes that what she experienced was no dream, it was real. A soft smile crosses her lips as she rises from her bed. Suddenly, a knock echoes at the door. Audrey calls out, "Who is it?" A gentle voice answers, "It's Annie." Her maid enters, asking permission to come in. Audrey agrees. Annie reminds her that she should get ready, then notices the broken shards of a mirror nearby. Pointing at it, she comments that it seems to have been shattered. Audrey quickly blames it on Susie, insisting, "It must have been Susie, she's always breaking things." Annie frowns and replies that Susie really ought to behave better. And with that, the curtain falls on the aftermath of the very first Tarot Club meeting. Audrey agreed to Annie's request. The maid asked which dress she wished to wear. Audrey replied that she wanted to put on the dress designed by Mrs. Ginny for her 17th birthday. Annie, however, immediately objected. That gown, she explained, had been worn at a formal occasion. If Audrey appeared in it again, society would think the Hall family was short of money. Audrey persisted, saying she liked it very much, but Annie firmly insisted it was only suitable for wearing at home, not in public gatherings. After listening to her advice, Audrey changed her decision and chose the lotus-sleeved dress that Mr. Seds had sent just 2 days ago. Annie praised her young lady's refined taste, and soon the room filled with activity as the maids prepared the gown. 2 attendants took particular care of Audrey, helping her dress as she sat gracefully on her seat. At that moment, a knock sounded at the door, followed by a man's voice. When the door opened, a gentleman stepped in. He wore an old-fashioned suit and vest, and on his finger gleamed a ring. He was Audrey's father. With a warm smile, he called her the brightest jewel in the Backlands and told her it was time to leave. Audrey pouted, telling him not to address her that way. He chuckled and instead called her my beautiful little queen while extending his hand. Audrey, however, refused to take it. She insisted she must walk on his right side. The left was reserved for Mercy Hall, the Countess, and no one could replace her mother. Audrey accepted this, but with pride she placed her hand on his right arm, declaring that it was her greatest honor. The scene shifted to Pratt's Harbor, where the vast Oak Island Royal Navy base came into view. A carriage arrived, and Audrey stepped out with her father. The air was filled with the blaring horn of a massive warship. Audrey gazed in amazement at the ironclad vessel. Its towering frame loomed above the waters, and from the sky came the deep, rhythmic thrum of an approaching airship. As the crowd gathered, anticipation spread among the people. Audrey spotted Oz among them, whose face glowed with excitement. She quickly realized that the descending airship belonged to none other than the king himself. Slowly, the vessel lowered and anchored at the docks. A ramp extended, and rows of soldiers marched out in perfect formation. Their polished armor gleamed brilliantly, swords held firmly in hand. From the airship emerged a distinguished figure in a crimson coat adorned with medals and tassels. Many other nobles and officials followed in his company. The crowd whispered with awe, this was none other than George III, ruler of the Lion Kingdom. Audrey's eyes fell on the armored soldiers. She wondered how they endured such heavy metal suits in an age dominated by iron, steam, and guns. It struck her that they must belong to higher-order disciplinary paradises. Soon after, Augustin, Prime Minister of the Lion Kingdom, stepped forward and addressed the gathering. He announced that together they had achieved history by creating a mighty ironclad warship. His voice carried authority as he listed its specifications. 1,001 meters in length. 21 meters in width. High freeboard design. 457 mm thick main armor belt. 1,060-ton total displacement. He continued proudly, describing its arsenal, for 35 mm main guns, 6 rapid-firing guns, 12 6-pounders, 18 6-barrel machine guns, and 4 torpedo tubes. With a speed of 16 knots, he proclaimed, this vessel would be an unmatched warrior of the seas. At last, the king himself was invited to christen the warship. George III raised his hand and declared that, since it began its maiden voyage from Pratt's Harbor, the ship would be named the Pratts. The harbor erupted in cheers and celebration as the colossal vessel sailed proudly into the waters. The Prime Minister then announced their next mission, to hunt down the notorious 7 pirates who styled themselves as admirals and the 4 who called themselves kings. They would be the first true test of the Pratts' power. He said that they would have to tremble in fear and await their end. He declared that the pirates' era was coming to an end, and no matter what ghost ships or cursed ships they possessed, only ironclad warships would roam the seas freely. When the Pratts was launched, the onlookers reacted with shock and panic. One man nervously asked if pirates could make their own ironclad warships. Another wondered aloud what would happen if they somehow managed to obtain one. The crowd erupted into discussions. Some argued that it was impossible, saying pirates could never match the resources of a great kingdom. To build the Pratts, they explained, required 3 massive coal and steel amalgamators, 20 large steel factories, 86 senior scientists and engineers, 2 royal shipyards, and about 100 specialized parts factories. On top of that, it demanded an admiralty, a powerful cabinet, a visionary king, and above all, a nation strong enough to produce 12 million tons of steel every year. The voices rose with conviction. Pirates could never achieve such things. Their world was too chaotic, too fractured, and without unity, they could not rival the might of a kingdom. Another man raised his voice above the crowd, declaring that a new age had begun, the era of guns, steel, and massive warships. The scene then shifts away from Pratt's harbor. It cuts to Klein's desk, where a book lay open. He frowned, sensing that something was wrong. Looking at his hand, he noticed the dots on his skin disappearing. His thoughts immediately turned to the ritual and the 4 dots that once formed a square. He wondered if it was connected to the 4 pieces of staple food placed at the corners of the room. Perhaps, in the future, he would not need to rely on food offerings at all and could proceed directly to rituals and incantations. Outwardly he tried to remain calm, but deep inside he was unsettled. He thought back over everything, from the Tao ritual to the strange changes he was experiencing now. Fear gripped him, the fear of the unknown, the kind that gnawed at the mind more than anything else. Quoting an old saying to himself, he thought, "Fear is the oldest and strongest emotion of humanity, and fear of the unknown is the oldest and strongest form of fear." Klein rose slowly from his bed, realizing that his body felt mostly fine, though he had a dull headache. Glancing at his pocket watch, he saw it was 2:30 a.m., meaning he had slept for just 3 hours. He wondered idly whether time in this world was measured the same way as on Earth, or if the passing of hours here was different. Then his stomach growled. His gaze drifted to the rye bread resting on a plate on the floor. He picked it up, chewing quietly, and thought with a touch of bitterness that this was what his life had become: rye bread for breakfast, rye bread for lunch, and only a little meat for dinner. Yet, at the same time, he remembered that now he had to prove himself as a transmigrator, to show his true ability. A faint smile crossed his lips. He walked to the oven, a piece of bread in hand, biting into a potato as well. Relief washed over him with the simple act of eating. On the table before him was a plate of bread and potatoes. He decided to eat slowly and wait for Melissa to return so they could share the meal together. As he tasted the potato, he found himself comforted. The flavor stirred childhood memories of days when he loved eating them like this. Yet the satisfaction of progress outweighed the exhaustion. With his hunger sated, he forced his thoughts back to his priorities. He acknowledged again that he had transmigrated, and there was no going back. Escape was impossible. Survival and advancement were the only paths. His most urgent goal was to establish contact with Kaka Mastism, to find a way to become a bystander, just as Justice and the Hanged Man had discussed. Fortunately, Klein had long nurtured the habit of keeping a diary. He resolved to study it carefully for clues before the next tarot gathering, to see whether his scattered notes might fill in the missing pieces of his fragmented memory. He also reminded himself that he had to look deeper into the mysterious issue that still lingered over him. The mystery of the client's death grew heavier in Klein's mind. He kept asking himself why the client had committed suicide and what exactly had happened to him. The May 24th journal entry revealed that Welsh had tracked the client down and told him that he had obtained a notebook from the 4th Epoch. The client was very excited about this 4th Epoch notebook. Welsh, however, did not want to ask the students in the archaeology department for help in deciphering its contents. Instead, he approached Klein and Naya for assistance with something like that. Klein wondered how he could refuse. Of course, he had to put it off until after graduation, after finishing his thesis. At a time like that, he simply could not afford to be distracted. According to Klein's memories, the present was the 5th Epoch, the Iron Age, but the 4th Epoch was the era of Solomon's Empire, the age before the Iron Age. Klein thought about the 4th Epoch and found it extremely mysterious. Historians only managed to piece together fragments of that period by relying on theological texts preserved by the 7 great churches. At present, the only known structures were the Solomon Empire, the Tudor dynasty, and the Second Empire. Klein himself had been a history student, and what he held might very well provide information about the 4th Epoch, also called the Age of the Gods. Normally, he should have been very excited by such a discovery. But suddenly Klein stopped, a dark thought striking him. Could it be that this information connected to the 4th Epoch was directly linked to the client's death? He wondered if there were more clues hidden in the journal and began flipping through the pages. An entry on June 24 mentioned that Naya had told the client they had discovered something new. The client thought he should go and see it. The next entry was written on June 25. From its deciphered contents, the client found that the real owner of the notebook had used a kind of machine to climb the highest peak in the Hornasin mountain range, where the nation of the Evernite resided. Klein was stunned. The highest peak in the Hornasin Mountains was over 6,000 meters high. How could a nation survive there? How could people live in such a place? Then came the final entry, on June 26, filled with strange sayings. Klein could not tell if all of those strange things were real. And then the journal ended. Klein frowned. He should have written an entry on June 27, yet nothing was there. He realized the client was already dead on the night of the 28th. That line echoed in his head, "Everyone will die." Klein put the journal down, realizing he had found all the clues he could from it. Now that he had seen everything, the client's struggles about the future seemed clear. In this world and age, universities were rare, and mostly nobles and aristocrats attended them. For a commoner to enter such schools was already an achievement. Even if one failed in the end, the connections made there could be valuable. Klein remembered Welsh, the son of a wealthy banker. Welsh had often grouped with him and Naya, and often came to them for help. Klein thought perhaps he should go to Welsh again and look at that old notebook one more time. Maybe he could uncover more clues that way. But then, he thought about how information like this always appeared in movies. He stared at the notebook, considering its potential connections, and realized the truth: if the notebook really was tied to him, then seeking more information would bring real danger. Yet he also knew he could not simply run away. He had to solve this mystery. He rejected the thought of going to the police. It didn't feel right. While he was still weighing his options, a sudden loud noise rang out. His head jerked toward the door. He reached out, hand trembling, and grabbed a revolver from beneath the desk. His heart pounded. Slowly, he approached, gun ready, and called out nervously, "Who is it?" Klein quickly readied his revolver, his nerves on edge. Suddenly, a voice shouted from outside, "It's Mountbatten!" "Police?" Relieved yet cautious, Klein hid the gun in the oven before opening the door. Pretending he had just woken up, he rubbed his eyes and muttered, "I was napping, what's going on?" Several men in suits and hats entered the room. One of them, clearly the inspector, looked Klein up and down before asking, "Do you know Welsh Megan?" Klein frowned in confusion. Did something happen to him? He asked. But the inspector cut him off coldly. "Let me ask the questions first. This is just routine questioning, don't worry about the stand." The inspector pressed again, "Do you know Welsh McGovern?" Taking a deep breath, Klein replied firmly. "If you're talking about Welsh McGovern, the graduate of Hoy University from Constable, then yes. We were classmates. Both of us studied under Senior Associate Professor Quentin Cohen." The inspector paused, clearly weighing Klein's words. Klein felt tension rising in his chest. Finally, he asked the question he dreaded, did something happen to Welsh? The inspector's face darkened. "Yes. Mr. Welsh has passed away." "I'm very sorry." Klein was stunned. His voice trembled. How is this possible?" The inspector did not stop there. "Mr. Naya has also passed. Both of them were found at Welsh's house." The shock was too much. Klein stood frozen, unable to believe what he was hearing. He demanded to know more about Naya. The inspector instead asked, "What was your relationship with Welsh?" Klein steadied himself and answered, "We had a good relationship. Welsh and Naya were meeting often. They were going through a fourth epoch document, a notebook." The inspector gave a grim nod before continuing. "According to the evidence, Welsh and Naya committed suicide." Klein's eyes widened. Suicide? He could hardly believe it. Were they murdered? But the inspector shook his head. The autopsy results and the scene ruled out drugs or external force. There were no signs of struggle on either body. Welsh repeatedly bashed his head against the wall. The blood covered it entirely. Naya drowned himself in a basin. Klein's thoughts spun out of control. Impossible, impossible, he muttered, horrified by such gruesome deaths. The inspector, however, remained calm. We thought the same at first. But all the evidence points to suicide. Trying to steady himself, Klein explained that the last time he had seen Welsh and Naya was on June 26, when they studied a new portion of the notebook together. After that, he returned home to prepare for his upcoming interview at the history department of Tungen University. But just then, one of the officers reached for a book on Klein's desk, his journal. Klein cursed inwardly. He had forgotten to hide it. His nerves spiked as the officer flipped it open. "Don't be nervous," the inspector said casually. "This is just part of procedure." Another man picked up the journal and read aloud. "What a strange line, what does this mean?" The line was one Klein knew well. "Everyone will die." He forced a calm expression and nodded. "I understand." The inspector studied him carefully, then said with a sigh of relief, "We're fortunate you're still alive, Mr. Klein." But inside, Klein's heart raced. Something felt wrong. He remembered waking up that morning with the unsettling sense that he had forgotten something important, something that still lingered like a shadow in his mind. The judicial system in the Lun Kingdom was still underdeveloped. Search warrants did not exist, and the police force itself had only been established 15 or 16 years ago. Two men in suits and hats stood near Klein, watching him closely. "What should I do?" he wondered. For a brief moment, he considered putting all the blame on Welsh. After all, dead men couldn't defend themselves. But the thought seemed absurd. Would anyone even believe him? If he went down that path, it would take tremendous effort to prove his innocence. One of the suited men looked skeptical. He accused Klein of pretending to have amnesia, suggesting that it was nothing more than an insanity plea. But Klein insisted that he was telling the truth. After observing him for a while, the officer seemed to waver. Perhaps Klein really was telling the truth. It was possible. The officer then informed Klein that an expert would arrive within the next day or two to help him recover his lost memories. Klein was surprised that the man actually believed him. The officer even commended him for his cooperation, but gave strict instructions. Klein was not to leave Tingen for the next few days. If he needed to go anywhere, he had to inform Officer Mountbatten first, otherwise he would face the full force of the law. As the officers prepared to leave, Klein asked himself, "Is it really over? Will they stop questioning me? Or will I be dragged back to the police station for interrogation?" He wondered if he should continue lying, or if it would be safer to maintain some form of contact with the police. After all, wasn't it common sense that everyone dies except for the gods? What dangers still awaited him? One of the men in suits gave a final warning. Klein was extremely lucky. Most people who got involved in incidents like this did not survive. With that, the door shut behind them. Klein exhaled in relief. He was still alive. Truly, he was lucky. But his thoughts quickly returned to the mysterious sentence he had written in his diary. Why did I write that? What does it mean? None of it made sense. Perhaps, he thought, telling the truth would be the best way out of this nightmare, but only if he played it carefully. He realized that his reaction so far had been unnatural, not quite human. His performance had flaws. From now on, he would need to work seriously on his acting skills if he wanted to survive. Klein lay down on the floor of his room and pulled out a revolver. Wiping sweat from his forehead, he decided to wait until Melissa returned home. He would cook something for her, lap and peas stew. Melissa's cooking had always been simple and rough, the kind of meals common in poor families with limited spices. If he waited for her to cook, it would take hours, and she would be hungry by then. So, Klein decided to surprise her. I'll show her what proper cooking really tastes like. A thought crossed his mind, what if Melissa asks me how I suddenly learned to cook? He smirked. He would blame it on Welsh. Dead men couldn't talk anyway. His thoughts drifted back to the so-called expert who would come to restore his memories. Perhaps she was a psychologist? The next scene shows Klein carefully chopping green onions on a wooden board. Soon after, he adds red peppers and garlic into a pot where broth is already boiling. The aroma fills the room. He inhales deeply and smiles. This smells amazing. When Melissa finally comes home, Klein is waiting by the door, a steaming bowl of soup in his hand. His face lights up with a warm smile as he greets her, "You're back." Melissa stares at him in surprise. Her eyes go to the soup in his hand and the table, where another bowl and 2 pieces of bread are neatly set. "You made this?" she asks, still doubtful. Klein laughs lightly and gestures to the food. "Go on, try it. Tell me what you think." Melissa sits down slowly, still processing the sight in front of her. She picks up the spoon, tasting the soup, while Klein watches her expectantly. Melissa took a bite, and her eyes widened. Soon the bowl was empty, shining clean. She rose and said softly, "All this should have been for you." Klein smiled back. "I already had a few bites." They sat together, gazing at one another. Melissa still held her fork with a small piece of meat stuck to it. Klein, meanwhile, was thinking that he truly wanted to uncover what had happened that day, and the fate of his friends. Melissa broke the silence. "How did you make this?" "It's a privilege that comes with being a chef," Klein replied lightly. Melissa nodded, accepting the explanation. Klein added that he had actually asked Welsh to teach him this dish. Though it was his first real attempt, he admitted silently that his cooking still couldn't compare to Welsh's. He promised himself that once he had money, he would take Melissa and Benson to a proper restaurant, where they could enjoy meals far more delicious than this. Suddenly, Melissa recalled Klein's earlier interview. She let out a burp and quickly covered her face, embarrassed. Klein chuckled and said it was her job to clean up. Melissa blushed, nodding. But her expression grew thoughtful. She pointed out that Klein had used black pepper and lard, ingredients they rarely touched. Klein reassured her that it was only a little, for flavor. Melissa then told him that from now on, she would take care of the cooking, and he should focus on his interview and finding a job. She urged him to sleep early. "Good night," Melissa said as she left. "Good night," Klein answered softly. As Klein was about to sleep, a sudden knock sounded on the door. He frowned. What time was it? Did Melissa forget something? Who could it be? A calm voice called from the other side, "It's Dunn Smith." Klein's heart skipped. Dunn slowly pushed the door open. "What's wrong?" Klein asked, wary. Dunn explained that he had found a coachman who confirmed Klein had indeed been there on that date. The coachman remembered that Klein had gone to Welsh's house the same day Welsh and Naya were killed, and that Welsh had even helped him pay for the ride. Klein tried to remain calm. "That's not very strong evidence," he replied. But he couldn't shake the feeling that Dunn suspected him. He admitted that he really couldn't remember what had happened on the 27th. His memory was gone, and all he had were his diary entries suggesting he had been at Welsh that day. "So I guessed correctly," Klein thought. On June 27th, the real Klein had indeed gone to Welsh's house. That night, Welsh and Naya had died, and perhaps he should have died with them. Dunn studied him carefully, then said Klein's mental stability and composure were impressive. Klein accepted this with a straight face, though his inner thoughts revealed he was still hiding part of the truth. Then Dunn mentioned something else. Welsh's revolver had gone missing. He suspected Klein might have it. Klein froze. Was the revolver really Welsh's? He lifted his hand slowly and admitted that it was under his bed, hidden in a frame. Dunn asked if there was anything else. "Yes," Klein said after a pause. "2 nights ago, I woke up in the middle of the night, and realized I had lost some of my memories, including what I saw at Welsh's." He was asked what he saw or did on the 27th at Welsh's house. Klein replied that he wasn't lying, he truly couldn't remember anything. Dunn Smith said that this matched his earlier premonitions and also fit with the hidden logic behind several of the previous incidents. He added that what he didn't understand was how Klein had survived. Klein took a deep breath and admitted that he didn't know either, but as long as Dunn believed in him, that was enough. Dunn, however, shook his head and said it no longer mattered whether he believed Klein or not, because now there was already too much suspicion surrounding him. Standing beside him, Dunn explained that they had to make sure Klein really had forgotten what happened, and that he wasn't the one responsible for Mr. Welsh and Miss Nayer's deaths. He then asked Klein to cooperate with the investigation and come back to the police station with them, assuring him that the whole process would likely be completed quickly. Klein asked whether the expert had already arrived, since Dunn had said earlier that it might take 2 days. Dunn confirmed that she had come earlier than expected. Klein hesitated and asked if he could at least leave a note for Melissa. Dunn agreed. As Klein sat down on the stairs to think, his mind grew restless. He wondered if this expert might somehow discover that he had transmigrated. He recalled that the assassination of Apa Osel had happened in front of the 7 major churches and thought that his transmigration might be some kind of anomaly linked to that. The thought that he could soon be standing before what felt like an arbitral tribunal made his chest tighten. He reminded himself of his situation. He had no weapons, no fighting skills, and no idea how many more police officers might be waiting outside. If they all drew their revolvers and fired, he wouldn't even have a chance. For now, he could only take one step at a time. Klein prepared to write the note. On the desk, alongside the papers, lay a key and a small book. Soon after, Dunn Smith, Klein, and another man stood near a carriage. Dunn instructed Klein to get inside. But before he could, a commotion broke out. A man shouted angrily at someone, demanding the return of something he claimed had been stolen. He threatened him loudly, while the accused insisted he hadn't stolen anything and demanded to be let go. In the chaos, a horse suddenly collided with the man holding Klein's hand. Klein's heart leapt. He thought, "This is my chance." With Dunn close by, Klein seized the moment and broke free, running as fast as he could. He reasoned that heading for the Backland district would be best. There were more people there, making it easier to hide. Dunn, watching him flee, muttered that he understood. Klein, however, had no idea Dunn was still right behind him. The sound of horses' hooves echoed along the road. A carriage approached quickly, its wheels rattling over the cobblestones. Klein, still a little dazed, thought about his situation. His mind replayed everything he had confessed, everything except the truth about his transmigration. He wondered if he would really be caught. Still, he told himself that if he could just escape the city, he might be able to avoid meeting the so-called expert altogether. Watching the passing carriages, he decided that as soon as he got the chance, he would jump into one to throw the police off his trail. Another carriage approached. Klein waved it down and urged the driver to hurry, asking to be taken to the pier outside the city. Then suddenly, he gasped. Klein sat upright on his bed, breathing heavily, his face buried in his hands. It had all been a dream. Relief washed over him as he realized it hadn't really happened. He glanced outside the window and saw the old red moon hanging in the sky. Checking his pocket watch, he found it was only 2 a.m. He stood up, still unsettled, and opened his bedroom door, telling himself he needed to relieve himself. Later, Klein was standing alone in another room, his mind heavy with thoughts of the Evernight goddess. Klein turned and saw Dunn Smith standing by the window. He was startled. Was it really him? For a moment, Klein wondered if this Dunn Smith was the real one, or just another figure inside his dream. Dunn spoke calmly, saying that he trusted Klein's dream self more than his conscious self, because ordinary people had no control over their dreams. Klein thought to himself, "Wait, so Dunn only saw what I wanted him to see? Or am I still dreaming?" Dunn continued, explaining that he could confirm Klein had indeed lost some memories due to the incident. Then he reintroduced himself. He was Dunn Smith, a night watcher. Klein was stunned. "A night watcher? Are these the same Beyonders that Justice and the Hanged Man mentioned at the tarot gathering? The ones under the Church of the Evernight Goddess?" Klein quickly asked if Dunn had been controlling his dreams, and whether that was why he had seen such a vivid dream. Dunn shook his head, saying he had only entered the dream to give some guidance. He explained that dreams reflected suppressed thoughts and emotions, often distorted and abstract, but the truth eventually surfaced. As a veteran, it was not difficult for him to uncover the truth hidden within. Klein's heart sank. That means, if I dream about Earth, he'll definitely know. But in the dream I was clear-minded. I knew exactly what to say and what not to say. Gathering himself, Klein asked if Dunn now fully believed that he had truly lost his memories. Dunn went quiet for a moment before responding. He admitted that he had encountered similar situations before, and even if it was just a dream, the clues were convincing. Klein replied that he could only hope and pray that these beyonder powers would be able to help him. Dunn gave a faint smile, saying it was an interesting thought, and perhaps it wasn't mere luck that Klein had survived until now. Klein cautiously asked if he could go home. But Dunn shook his head. He told Klein he still had to come with him to meet the expert. Klein was stunned. What? If this expert knows about the guidance Dunn gave me in my dream, what if they can read minds, or hypnotize me? I won't be able to hide the fact that I've transmigrated. Dunn, sensing his unease, reassured him. He said that while he was confident in his own dream-related abilities, it wouldn't hurt to double-check. The expert specialized in different techniques and might even be able to help Klein recover some of his missing memories, perhaps even the current location of the Antigonus family notebook, which Klein had once valued so much. Klein froze. The Antigonus family notebook? Dunn explained further, they hadn't been able to find the Fourth Epoch notebook. They had searched Mr. Wells' house thoroughly, but it was nowhere to be found. With Wells dead and Nair also gone, Klein was the only lead left. Klein thought quickly. The notebook is missing? How strange. I never once wondered where it ended up. Klein, Dunn called him back to attention. Let's head to Wells' house. The expert is waiting there. Panic welled up inside Klein. I want to run. But the Night Watchers are far stronger than ordinary people. From what I've already seen, Dunn's reactions alone are enough to prove that. He might even be armed. If I try to escape, I won't stand a chance. And yet, deep down, Klein couldn't shake the thought, is all this happening just because I transmigrated? Is there something wrong with my very state of mind? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more manhwa recaps. Comment a next part if you want part 2. And let me know which manhwa you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video.